Good afternoon, everyone. This week's video is about commas. And a comma is the most commonly used punctuation that we have. Also, sadly though, it's the most misused punctuation that we have. So we're actually going to do a series of 3 video lessons over 3 weeks about how to use a comma correctly. Basically what we need to know about a comma is it indicates a pause in a sentence, which a lot of us know. It sets off parts of a sentence, and it's used to group items together in a sentence. We're going to be talking about 3 rules for comma use today. And I thought we'd start with one that's probably pretty easy because I think you already know it because we've talked about compound sentences already. But the first use of commas that we're going to learn is using a comma with a coordinating conjunction to properly punctuate a compound sentence. Now we've talked before that there's really 2 ways to punctuate a compound sentence, either a semicolon, which is strong enough by itself, or a comma. And a comma isn't strong enough by itself, so we have to add one of the coordinating conjunctions, or the fanboys. In the following sentences, my dog is trained, but I still walk him on a leash. We put the comma before the but, and that's properly punctuated. But if you look at the second sentence, Tony likes both watching soccer and playing football. In that case, we wouldn't put the comma there because the and is not separating 2 independent clauses. It's putting together 2 direct objects, basically. Tony likes both watching soccer and playing football. Not 2 independent thoughts, so we don't use the comma there. Our next rule for commas is you use a comma in a series if you have 3 or more items that you're listing. Like in the following example. Gorillas eat roots, leaves, and fruit. And notice because there are 3 of them, roots, leaves, and fruit, we put commas between the 2 items. You wouldn't put a comma before the 3rd item, which is fruit, because that would look weird. Roots, comma, leaves, comma, and comma, fruit. That wouldn't make sense. The and kind of does the job for the last one there. Now that's just if you're separating 3 items that are single words. But you also would use it if you're separating items in a series if they're phrases, like in the following 2 examples. You need to get up, get dressed, and do the dishes. You would put a comma between get up, get dressed, and do the dishes. And you can hear the pause in my speech, so it makes sense that we'd put a comma there. And the last one, the dog walked over the log, around the tree, and into the water. Again, in this case, we're separating 3 prepositional phrases, and you can hear the pause in my speech whenever I say it, so it does make sense that we'd need a comma there. There are, though, a couple of exceptions to this rule about using commas in a series. Look at this sentence. We didn't see any birds or snakes or spiders. Now, I don't have any commas there because the conjunction or is really doing the job of a comma in this sentence. So I don't need it again. And think about it like this. If I had, we didn't see any birds, comma, or snakes, comma, or spiders, that would be like how we did it with a compound sentence, because we'd have a comma and then a fanboy, or is one of those coordinating conjunctions. And that isn't enough to be its own independent thought. So for another reason, it kind of makes sense that we do not use commas whenever the items in a series are separated by conjunctions. And the second exception is down here in this sentence. Your choices are ham and cheese, turkey, or peanut butter and jelly. Now you notice there are commas separating those items, but the 3 items are ham and cheese, and then turkey is the second one, and then the 3rd item in the series is peanut butter and jelly. You notice there's no comma between ham and cheese, and there's no comma between peanut butter and jelly, because those count as one thing. Ham and cheese is one item in that series, in the same way that turkey is one item in that series. Make sense? Hope so. Our last rule for this video is using commas between adjectives. Okay? And you don't do it the same every time, so we really need to talk about a rule here. If the order of your adjectives matters in the sentence, then you would not use a comma. But if the order of the adjectives does not matter in your sentence, that's when you use a comma. Okay, let's look at these 2 examples. I left clear, concise instructions for the sub. Now I could switch that and it would still make sense. I could say, I left concise, clear instructions for the sub. So in that case, I need the comma because the order doesn't really matter. Another good trick there is if you can put the word and in there and it still makes sense, then again, you need the comma. I left clear and concise instructions for the sub. That still makes sense. So I would need to put the comma there. But in the bottom sentence, the talented football player kicked the goal, I couldn't say the football talented player kicked the goal. That wouldn't make sense. So the order of my 2 adjectives there, talented and football, that is important. It does matter that they're in that right order. So in that case, I do not use a comma. And again, for my other trick, the talented and football player kicked the goal, that doesn't make sense at all. So that's another way of knowing that you don't need a comma in that situation, because the order does matter. Okay, those are our first 3 comma rules. There will be more coming in the second and third part of this video. But again, those will be the next week and then the week after that. See you in class.